You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
And we are back for the 7th and final round of the Swiss portion of the ETS weekly here in week 3. I am Sir Rhino, and here to help me bring in this 7th round is LocoPojo. How you doing, Loco?
Oh, I'm doing great. Doing absolutely fantastic. We got a heck of a match here today. A Cambrai deck with 2 or 3 Awakened students in the opening hand. I'm guessing Flash is going to go ahead and keep that hand, and that should be a really interesting round 1 as far as things go.
Yeah, we've got aggro here. We've been seeing a lot of mid-range and control throughout the tournament today, but Flash is on Cambrai aggro, not Cambrai flyers, just Cambrai kind of aggressive beats, right? Your Awakened Students, Tranquil Scholars, Auric Record Keeper, one of the new 4/4s for 3 coming into Cambrai's toolbox, topping off with Reality Wardens and Carnosaurs.
Super strong card, yeah.
Yeah. No obelisks here. Normally you see that in Cambrai aggro, not here. This is just playing bigger than usual stuff at every point of the curve, backing them up with normally stand together. That's also in the sideboard. This is just cheap beats, and that's it. On the other side, we've got Sardek, who's on Rakano. No Oni Ronins in the main deck, no torches in the main deck. Going more almost mid-range kind of fast, right?
4/12, yeah, it's an interesting call to not run 4 torches, and typically not a correct one, but potentially could work out for Sardek if you were playing a large enough variety of threats. Sardek is running like 4 Vanquishes and 4 Auric Runehammer, so he's got a decent amount of stuff going on here against mid-range, which has probably been responsible for some of his success so far.
Yeah, both of these players are at 4 and 2, so this is they have pretty good tiebreakers though, so if a player with X and 2 gets in, it's likely going to be one of these players. If they win this match, they're likely going to make it in. But having no torches might end up really hurting Sardek here. As you mentioned earlier, Flash has 3 Awakened Students in this hand.
Yep, 3 Awakened Students in the opening hand. Absolutely no answers for Flash. And Awakened Student into Awakened Student seat is just really the worst thing that you can possibly see as a Rakano deck. I don't expect this first round to last very long.
Well, we'll see what happens. The Sigil is the draw there for Sardek, so he can go Seed of Glory, get the Unseen Commando down. Maybe Unseen Commando with Reinvigorate can do some cool stuff to get him back in this. Plus, that Seed of Glory will fully buff up his Champion of Glory, so he'll try and put up a fight here. It just may be not enough to get back from this, where you don't have a torch to answer these early students, and they just kind of spiral out of control.
Yeah, we're seeing Sandstorm Titan as Flash's next play, or he could just continue to take the Awakened Student plan for a ride. It's not a bad plan at all. Flash would probably like to play Sandstorm Titan soon, but if he plays the Awakened Student here, then he can draw away some Vanquishes and Auric Runehammers and get himself into a position to just set up Sandstorm Titan against, I think, Sardek's only 4 answers in the deck.
Yeah. Sardek has 4 Vanquish as his removal and 4 Auric Runehammers, and then has a pretty awesome flying plan though, with 4 Unseen Commando, 4 Valkyrie Enforcer, and then 4 Soulfire Drake. There's no Deep Forge plate in this list. Soulfire Drake is the weapon 5-drop of choice, which also works pretty cool with Unseen Commando. There's a lot of charge coming out of this Rakano list. I really like some of the risks Sardek took here, where it's really anti-control aggro. The problem is suffering in this aggro versus aggro matchup because of the lack of torches.
There's a lot of cool variants of Rakano out there that I think haven't been played too often. People tend to rely on their plate-based builds pretty heavily, but there was a JPEG Rakano version that existed for a while that was pretty focused on just very tiny creatures and piercing shots, things like that. There's certainly this unit focus that you can roll for, and we've got like a potential new gunslinger weapon mechanic that hasn't seen a lot of play yet. Maybe once people start getting their 4 sets of Stellas crafted, we'll see a little bit more.
Yeah, essentially what's helping this Rakano renaissance, if you will, is the addition of not only Unseen Commando, but Whirling Duo. That's giving Rakano access to a lot more life gain than it's ever had before, while still allowing it to stay relatively aggressive. And that's why we can see this sort of build where you're not always relying on needing that turn 1 Oni Ronin, needing to snowball with it, and getting those war cries so that your units are actually competing or better than your opponents. And we see the A space out of Sardek here, has that Reinvigorate backup, and Flash is not interested in putting a Sandstorm Titan in front of that.
Yep, so Tranquil Scholar into Awakened Student looks pretty fun here. That's going to give 2 units random skills, which could be very good skills. Certainly Lifesteal is not a bad one to have on an Awakened Student.
There's some tension here for Flash, though, because he wants Awakened Student to get hit by Time Sigil, but he's also clearly worried about a combat trick here, and if the opponent uses a combat trick, your Vanquish would get unlocked. But Flash ultimately goes for that. He goes in with the A space, and Reinvigorate could be huge here. It would make this Unseen Commando a 5/6 this turn and be able to eat one of these Awakened Students.
Yeah, combined with that lifesteal, that's a pretty big deal. And now Unseen Commando has endurance for good. So it's going to be able to actually defend against any small 2-drop that it wants to.
That was nice. The problem is Sandstorm Titan's still alive. But with Unseen Commando, this Soulfire Drake can swing into it. The issue is it's grounded, so Awakened Student can just trade with it if Flash even wants to trade for the Soulfire Drake. Nope, we'll take the 6 damage instead.
Yeah, he's got the Vanquish access, so I don't think he's terribly excited about that concept. Playing Knight Chancellor Seraph is fine. Vanquishing the Soulfire Drake is also good. And now his attacks look actually pretty reasonable here. He's got good attack with the 5/5 and the 3/3. And of course with the Sandstorm Titan as well, although that does deny him the ability to access flyers. I think at this point he just needs to be pressing with his larger units.
Yeah, I think what Flash needed to do was last turn, instead of eating an Awakened Student, he should have double blocked the Sandstorm Titan with, say, the Crown Watch Paladin to get that off the board. That way you would have been able to swing with your Endurance Unseen Commando and gain life every turn, and your Soulfire Drakes wouldn't have been blockable. But you draw a charging Flying Valkyrie Enforcer off the top. That gets at least Unseen Commando able to swing here, as it does have Endurance.
Yeah, it's 3 extra health. He's still got to chump block a lot of stuff here, which is not going to help him that much. The Unseen Commando can block the 2/2, so I don't know if Flash has lethal next turn if he just goes in.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing. There's a lot of weird numbers going on with how much, like, the Tranquil Scholar had incidental lifesteal, that Awakened Student had lifesteal, so that was throwing off some things. As Unseen Commando will put Sardek to 5 and then can block as well if it needs to, which will bring him up to 7.
Yeah, he's got some amount of extra goodness here, and there's certainly some combat math.
Didn't swing with Commando. He may have forgot that it was permanently given endurance from that Reinvigorate.
Yeah, that's a big issue. That's 3 extra life that he could have gotten, and now he just has to chump block with the Commando. I don't think that's a particularly good situation for him. I think he's in a lot of trouble now.
Yeah, that could be a real costly mistake here. So, there was that double block he missed out on with Unseen Commando earlier, and now he missed out on a swing with that. And when in a game where both players are just racing to win, Flash is way ahead now.
Yeah, this block is just death. There's no way that Sardek can come back now.
Yeah, he had a shot with that Soulfire Drake in hand to get a really big swing, right? He would have had his opponent down to 8 by swinging with Commando last turn. Maybe wouldn't have had to block with it, and this Soulfire Drake would have been lethal. And instead, Flash takes this game down.
Yep, that seals it. So pretty rough deal, but Sardek gets where he goes, and that's all there is.
Yeah, well, that's all there is for game 1 anyways. We'll get to go into sideboards here, and man, there are some real intriguing things for both players to get into with this matchup. Sardek, as we mentioned, has 4 torches in the sideboard, some obliterates too if you want to get into that race, or Tinker Overseers for a nice flying plan. I don't actually like bringing in the Oni Ronins here when your opponent's playing things like Record Keeper, Seraph, Awakened Student. I don't think it's going to be long for this world. Meantime, Flash could up his combat trick game with Finest Hour, or bring in Dawnwalkers and Initiations and try and grind it out.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. I'd say that, like, overall, the main thing here is that there's just got to be good answers to the early threats. And Sardek doesn't have a lot going on there. He can bring those 4 torches in from the sideboard, which is not a bad plan. I do like that he actually kept the 4 torches on the side. They are clearly necessary for aggro matchups like this.
Yeah, the other funny thing going on here is Protect's a card we normally expect to come out of the sideboard and into the main deck, but both of these players started with 4 of them in the main deck, and I think we're going to see them get shaved down. There's 4 vanquishes on both sides, and other than that, there's basically no interaction from either player. It's combat tricks and killer effects and things like
that. Whoever gets there first is just basically how it goes. There's some really interesting combat math going on here with all of the lifesteal units flying around and the special ways that each of these units actually get like a little bit of extra health. It gets very complicated very quickly. It's a fun aggro board state, I think, for a tournament.
Yeah, I think we'll see Flash keep in some number of protects because Sandstorm Titan is a very nice unit. Same with Reality Warden. They're just naturally bigger than what Sardek is throwing at you. So if you can get those to stick, you don't have to fear all these charge units coming from Sardek in the form of Soulfire, Drake, and Whirling Duo. Like, I think Flash is going to try and get a board stall going and then let the Predatory Carnosaurs and Reality Wardens and Night Chancellor Seraphs take over. Or just have the draw that you did there where you had triple Awakened Student and just let them get to work.
Yep, it's a crazy, crazy time. We'll see exactly what ends up being the correct path.
Yeah, generally in the matchup of aggressive deck versus aggressive deck, the slightly bigger aggressive deck is favored. We'll see. That held true for the first game, and it's really a question of can that be the case in game number. That Reinvigorate with Unseen Commando gave Sardek a chance to come back from that rough start, but it just wasn't.
Little bit tricky, a little bit too much. I mean, it's very hard to beat 3 Awakened Students like on the curve. That's like sort of like, oh man, that's year 1 draft kind of plays. It's real good. God.
Yes. Oh man, those are the double oath books and things like that, flashbacks from early draft. But yeah, these players are still debating with exactly what to do with the sideboards. It looks like changing some things around. It looks like Sardek is debating about bringing in Steelfang Chakram. That seems a little too slow for this.
Yeah, it's a pretty ambitious play. It provides you with a lot of value, and it's very good on Unseen Commando in particular. And in fact, like the amount of flyers that Sardek has access to, I can kind of see Steelfang Chakram being a good answer both to Sandstorm Titan and to just like basically anything that wants to push back.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those issues where your units are naturally smaller than your opponents, so you need some way to even that out, and the only weapon they have available in their sideboard is Chakram. They don't have a Deep Forge Plate to throw in or a Hammer of Might or something like that. And at least Chakram, as you said, is good on flyers. They also have a lot of units with Quick Draw. 4 Rakano Outlaw, 4 Champion of Glory. It can do a decent amount of work on that as well.
Yeah, I can definitely see a Deep Forge Plate being better than a Chakram here. I think it's more designed for like the control matchup than for an aggro matchup, but he does kind of want something to make it just slightly bigger than the Combrade.
Yeah, so I can see the reasoning there. It might not be ideal, but it's the best you've got, and sometimes you just have to roll with it. So see what happens here. I don't think Sardek was quite prepared for this kind of slightly bigger mid-range aggro kind of deck. And
Combrade aggro is really often a sleeper in tournaments. It tends to not be scary until it is. Like you don't think about it and then it's there. And you're like, oh, this deck's actually really good.
Yeah, I have gotten a 9-0 with Combrade aggro before in ETS opens where you just kind of show up and you're like, well, maybe this will work out. And it just so happens that efficient units plus obelisks or protects or stand-togethers can just get the job done if people aren't packing the right removal for them. Awakened Student can be a real menace.
Yeah, this is a fascinating list, actually, because it's an aggro Combrade list that doesn't rely on either obelisk or stand together.
Right.
I'm not even sure. There's just 2 of them in the side. It's fairly impressive in that respect.
Yeah, it's just relying on the units already being naturally big. And we see this game get underway. Sardek crucially on the play here. So this Awakened Student doesn't get to grow into range to block this Rakano Outlaw as it gets silenced by Valkyrie Enforcer.
Yeah, he's got his own Valkyrie Enforcers to interact, which is good. That's actually more interactivity than we've seen like the first 4 turns of the last game. So
yeah,
fairly solid there. Valkyrie Enforcer gets to knock the Warcry off the 2/2 or knock the Flyer out of the sky, depending on which one he prefers.
Unless we see Seraph come down as just a 3/4 blocker here, but Valkyrie Enforcer blocks just as well as Seraph does. And yeah, as you said, it'll silence the dangerous quick draw from Rakano Outlaw. Although not quite as dangerous as we talked about. Sardek doesn't have like weapons to augment it, so he only has a couple of combat tricks.
Yeah, Flash is stuck on defense here, but he's probably pretty comfy on defense. Most of his units get bigger than his opponent's stuff, and he does have access to like some pretty scary top end, including Reality Wardens, Predatory Carnosaurs, and Sandstorm Titans, if he so chooses.
Yeah, both players with kind of power-heavy draws with only 2 spells in hand on both sides. So Sardek's got to decide if he wants to get the Whirling Duo down, and that's what we see. Whirling Duo comes down in a space out of Sardek, willing to just suicide attack with this Rakano Outlaw. It's not getting any better. Might as well swing now and push through essentially 3 to 6 extra damage because it means one of your 3/3s isn't dying this turn.
Yep, Flash going for the value here. He's expecting to be able to gain some life back later, or at least to get into such a commanding board position that it doesn't really matter. Here he's going to go ahead and play his Sandstorm Titan, and that'll lock down the Flyers and give him some good answers to Whirling Duo.
Yeah, and power is the draw for Sardek here. This Cinder Yeti not looking quite as good as it did last turn, as Sandstorm Titan has endurance. And this is lining up real well for Flash. He can play Seraph and give it initiation right away. Can hold up Desert Marshal if he so chooses.
Yeah, I think he initiates the Sandstorm Titan, honestly. It's just getting a bigger Sandstorm Titan and keeping the blocker is really good.
I don't know if I love that, just because then you're putting all your eggs in a basket against Vanquish when you have no Protect. And instead, yeah, going with Seraph, it means your shields are kind of down against normally you could be scared of something like the Soulfire Drake, but because they can't play Drake and Vanquish, you can afford to have your Desert Marshal shields down for it.
Yeah, Flash super comfy attacking with the Sandstorm Titan since he's got a backup one. He could have Desert Marshaled first to force a bad block, but I think it's just fine to keep the Desert Marshal against surprises, so he's looking pretty good.
Yeah, Desert Marshal, I think he's mostly going to remind things like Soulfire Drake or Unseen Commando that they can't escape, but Obliterate off the top from Sardek makes this a little more interesting. He's still quite behind on board, but at least he's dealt with 2 Sandstorms.
Yeah, Flash can attack with everything here if he wants to use his Finest Hour against his opponent. And considering that he wants to attack with that Valkyrie for sure, I'm guessing the Finest Hour is definitely going to be seeing play here. So it's worthwhile to attack with the 2/2 as well.
Yeah, no blocks from Sardek. He's hoping to get like a Soulfire Drake off the top and somehow turn this race around. But instead, it's another power out of Sardek here. And he cannot use an 8th power as well as Combray can, it turns out.
Yeah, that Combray deck's definitely going to just walk all over Sardek, and Flash should be advancing. It'll be the 2-0 for him, and I think there's not that many answers for Sardek that can possibly come out here.
Yeah, Desert Marshal's going to come down, take that Valkyrie out of the sky, clear the air, make Sardek have to make some rough blocks, but Finest Hour is almost certainly going to get the job done.
Yep. Walks in on Seraph would be not enough. I don't think there's any way that Flash doesn't have lethal here.
Yeah, with that extra 2 strength, Sardek's at 7, 3 in the air, plus any 4 that you can figure out will do the job. And as you said, you'll have to put Valkyrie Enforcer in front of that overwhelming Seraph. And that would have kept you alive at 1 health, but not through this Finest Hour.
And that's all she wrote. I don't like the Finest Hour on the Valkyrie there, just because a torch would have been an answer, but all the same, he found it.
Yeah. Ideally, you just put it on the Seraph that plays around Torch, but either way, a win's a win. Flash takes that, goes to 5-2, is likely to make top 8. I'm not sure if it's a mortal lock, but I know from what I heard, his breakers were pretty good. Have to see as we wait for the rest of the round to shake out. We've got some initial results here. So here are the players that are 6-1 or better. They are definitely locked for top 8. We have Danabor running it back with a Cardia Blue, taking 7-0 throughout the rounds today. Had a second place finish last weekend and doing really well in back-to-back weeks. Linny Vine we saw earlier as well, 6-1 on Xenon mid-range. Croge 6-1 on Argenport mid-range. Mr. No Time Man on Argenport mid-range at 6-1, and Mr. Bombito on Praxis mid-range at 6-1. Also, second blue I'm getting is also at 6-1, and second blue was on Grenadin. So a lot of great repeat performances for some players from earlier in the season, showing off that it is not a fluke.
Yeah, getting their decks all sorted out, making sure that they got just the right stuff to be throwing themselves into the finals. So good times, and I think congratulations to all the players who have broken so far.
Yeah, so again, we still got to run tiebreakers. We kind of expect Flash to be one of the X and 2s to make it in, as there's still 2 spots open in the top 8, but we'll see how that pans out after we take this short little break and get back in to top 8 coverage when we return.
In a moment, folks.